Hi, we want to talk about getting paid. Of course, if you do a job, you want to get paid for it. That just makes sense. But there's a little bit more to it than that. So, the first thing you need to look at is how are you employed? Are you self-employed or are you employed by an employer? If you are employed by an employer, they are responsible for paying into your payroll taxes, your Social Security, and Medicare. You pay half, they pay half. If you are self-employed, it is your responsibility to pay both parts of that and get it sent in. If you are employed by the employer, I don't have to do anything with those. Wilson Public Schools does that for me. You also need to look at salary versus hourly. And there's pros and cons to both of these that we can talk about in class, but just so you know the difference. Salary is a set amount of money. You get paid X amount of dollars a year. This is what teachers would have. It doesn't matter if I come in at 6:30 in the morning and stay until 9 o'clock at night. I don't get paid extra for that. It is assumed or expected that I will do the job that needs to be done regardless of the number of hours that it takes me. Okay? Some people can do it within their contract hours. I choose to do work outside of my contract hours. An hourly wage, you get the specific rate for the time that you put in. The example on the screen, $16 an hour. Any time that I put in above that, over 40 hours a week, is overtime, and you get paid time and a half. Okay? There's pros and cons to that. Depends on how much you work, and if you don't go to work, you don't get paid. We'll talk about that in class, hopefully. With the hourly wage, there's also a minimum wage for federal and state. They have to pay you a minimum amount. The kind of exception to this are people that are in the food service industry as like waiters and waitresses. Their hourly wage can be below minimum wage because it is assumed that they will make money getting tips also. Okay. Then we look at how is the employer actually going to pay their employees. And there's basically three different options here: the paper paycheck, the direct deposit, the payroll card. All right. Here's your paper paycheck and direct deposit. Paper paycheck, just like it sounds, they hand you a piece of paper, you take it to the bank, you cash it, you put it in your account, and do whatever. It is your responsibility to get it from you into your account. So if you don't have time to go to the bank the day that you get your paycheck, you can't spend that money. Direct deposit, the wages go directly to your checking account. You don't have to do anything. I know that by 9:30 on the 20th of every month, my paycheck is going to be deposited into my checking account. I don't have to do anything but go online and check to see that it has happened. Then there's a payroll card, and this is becoming a little bit more common, especially in this area with the oil industry. If you think about people that are very transient, or like my husband who is working in Ohio right now, he'll probably be working back in North Dakota, hopefully during the winter, and then he might be in Indiana or Missouri. We don't know yet. We don't want to open up checking accounts wherever he goes. So some places have gone to a payroll card, so it just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, with the payroll card, what happens on payday is what you have earned goes on to like a debit card, and then you use that debit card to spend your money. Okay, the problem with this is there's lots of fees with it. Generally, they charge you to put the money on, they charge you every time you use it, they charge you to transfer the money, so you lose bits and pieces of your money as you go along. Okay. This is not linked to your checking account, so you don't have to have a checking account in order to use this. It is linked to the employer's account. So theoretically, you could get this and then transfer all the money into your own personal account, or you could just use it off the debit card. But again, fees are very common on this one, so that's kind of a drawback. Okay, when you get your paycheck, you're not going to get all the money. Okay, there's going to be payroll deductions. Your gross income is what you get before they take out taxes, minus the deductions, and that gets your net income. Okay, and there's mandatory and optional deductions there. Look at it this way, those of you who are fishermen, okay? Gross pay, the whole lake, everything is in there, all the money that you have earned, okay? Then you take, you get the fish, and if you look, all the, the extra water is filtering out back into the lake, and what you take home is your net pay, or what's left in the net. So if you have trouble remembering the difference between net pay and gross pay, just think about fishing, and net pay is what you get to take home in the net. You're not going to take home the whole lake. The deductions are going to be taken out. You get to take home what's in the net. Right. Now we talked about the different kinds of taxes. We're not going to talk about all of them again. We're just going to briefly do an overview. Your income and payroll taxes are withheld from your wages. Okay. And why do they take them out every paycheck? Why can't I just pay them at the end? Well, it helps manage your tax liability. Because if you look at what you owe overall in a year, it's a pretty good sum of money. And most people aren't going to save a little bit every time to pay those. So what the government does is, you know what, we'll do a pay-as-you-go program. And then hopefully when you file your taxes, you're pretty close to what your tax liability is, and you won't have to pay in extra. And a lot of times you get some of it back, which is really nice. You want to try to get your tax liability and what they take out of your paycheck pretty close. Because it's nice to get a big refund, but basically you're giving the government an interest-free loan, because they're not going to pay you interest on that money that you're going to get back. So here's the mandatory income and payroll tax deductions. We have our federal income tax and our state income tax that we talked about, what those fund, and then our payroll taxes of Social Security and Medicare. Your federal income tax, you look at the amount of money that you earned, and then you look at the W-4. When you, we'll look at the W-4 in just a second. And we talked about what you get from the federal income taxes. So let's look at the W-4 here. It's a form that you're going to fill out whenever you start a job. They're going to ask you, are you married or you're not married, and the number of allowances that you have. This is going to determine how much they're going to deduct from your federal income taxes. Your allowances are the people or the situations that you're in that would mean maybe they don't take out as much. Okay, so if you look at this, you can claim an allowance only if no one else claims that person as a dependent. Dependent is someone who relies on the taxpayer for financial support, like a qualifying child. Most of you are going to be in that category, or a qualifying adult relative, somebody that you're taking care of. But you can only claim yourself if no one claims you as a dependent. Okay, the rule of thumb, you may claim an allowance for every dependent. That's basically, just how it works. Okay, now here's the deal. When you go to do your taxes, if there are different ways of looking at it. Okay, so if you're a dependent, or I'll give you the situation in our family, my son Andy was working hard, he was still a dependent. Okay, when we went to do his taxes, or our family taxes, we looked at it two different ways. And we said, okay, if Andy files on his own, how much money would he get back? If Andy allows us to claim him as a dependent, and we claim him on our taxes, how much money would we get back? And then we looked at the differences, and it turned out that he would get more money back if we claimed him on our taxes. So what we did, we said, okay, Andy, you would have gotten this much back if you would have filed as not a dependent. We can get more back, so we'll give you what you would have gotten back. Okay, so there's different ways of looking at it, and it's perfectly legal. You look at what situation is going to be the best for you. Okay, so the number of allowances that you claim, federal income tax deducted, equals your tax liability. And you can change that anytime. If there's an event in your family, maybe you have a baby or something like that, or maybe you get to the end of the year, like, oh, for the last couple of years, I've ended up having to pay in like $500. You can tell your employer on your W-4 to take out a little bit extra. Take an extra $50 out and put it toward my taxes because the numbers just aren't working and I don't want to owe anything. And you can do that. This isn't a legally binding contract. You can tell them to take out $100 every time for no good reason and then get it back if that's what you want to do. Just remember, you're giving the government an interest-free loan when you do that. Okay, your state income tax, not all states do, ours does, and that varies from state to state depending on what their needs are. And then we have Social Security, and we talked about what Social Security does. It provides income for retirees, people with profound disabilities, children who have lost a parent, and a person with children who has experienced the death of a spouse. Okay? A lot of people think Social Security is just for senior citizens to give them money, but it's a lot more than that. You know my story. My children's first mom passed away, and so from the time that she passed away until my youngest graduated from high school, we received Social Security benefits. I also received Social Security benefits when my husband passed. After my husband passed away, number one, you get a one-time death benefit. It's not very much, but because he was not able to work most of the last year that he was alive, he was considered disabled, and I was able to get some money to help with expenses at that time. Okay. Now, after he passed away, I was not eligible for Social Security benefits because of his death, because of our ages. Okay. They deduct 6.2% of your income up to an annual maximum, and I pay half and my employer pays half. So I pay 6.2% and my employer pays 6.2%. Okay. Then we have Medicare, also part of FICA, the Federal Insurance Contribution Act. This provides health care for individuals 65 and older. This is not the same as Medicaid. Medicaid is for people who are financially unable to provide for their own health care. Medicare is for individuals 65 and older. This is 1.45% of your wages with no limit. Okay. The Social Security, once it hits a certain dollar amount, they stop taking it out. With this one, there's no limit. It's paid on everything. This is another one that is matched. The worker pays 1.45% and the employer pays 1.45%. So going back to your self-employment, if you are self-employed, you have to pay both of those. Then we have optional payroll deductions. The federal, state, and FICA is mandatory. These are optional. Could be insurance. Your employer might provide insurance plan for you. You pay part of it or pay the deductible, or not the premiums, because it's cheaper to do it that way. Maybe a retirement plan where you're investing in like a 401k, things like that. They'll take that out of the payroll deduction. And then flexible spending accounts. A flexible spending account is basically you are putting money in pre-taxed, so they haven't taken taxes out of it yet, into a savings account. And then if you can use it for medical expenses, I believe childcare, prescriptions, things like that. So you pay for those things, you file a form, and they send you the money back. The benefits of that are, number one, it's pre-tax, so you're not paying tax on that amount, and then you have that money available to you. You don't have to wonder, oh, am I going to have enough money to pay my daycare, because it's already taken out. Now, let's say you have a prescription every month that costs you $5.47. It probably is not going to be beneficial for you to put that under a flexible spending account, because it's not that much money. But if you know you're going to have a lot of expenses, that can be a very good program for you. The catch is, if you don't spend it all, you don't get it back. So you have to be really careful about estimating what you're going to need. And then we have the workers' compensation and unemployment insurance. Workers' compensation, if you are injured on the job, workers' compensation is going to help pay for those medical expenses. The unemployment insurance, if you lose your job due to no fault of your own, doesn't mean, oh, I want to quit because I don't, like my manager. It needs to be, you got laid off kind of thing. Then you can collect unemployment insurance. If you are paid in cash, and then sometimes they call that getting paid under the table, you are not protected on these. And a lot of people think, well, I'll get paid in cash and then I don't have to pay taxes on that money. That is true. You're not paying taxes, so you're not doing your fair share, but you're also not supported by workers' comp and unemployment. So if you get hurt on the job and you're being paid cash, those medical expenses are your responsibility. You are not covered. So it's very risky to get paid in cash. These are required, and it doesn't cost the employee anything. It doesn't cost you a thing to participate in these. It's all up to the employer. And then we also have things like paid or unpaid days for illness, personal holidays, and of course, then they match your contributions to Social Security and Medicare. When you are going to get a job, these are all things that you need to look at to get the best situation for yourself.